I'm calling this meeting of the election committee to order. In attendance from the committee, we have Allison Price and Ben Dunford. Eric Shaw is traveling, I believe, so will not be joining us for tonight's meeting. So first on the agenda, we have opening for resident comment. As everyone has no doubt heard me say a number of times, if for resident comment, if you would like to make a comment, either raise your hand via Zoom or turn your video on, raise your hand. Also, I always make this available to people. The election committee inbox is available if you have extensive comments or anything that you would feel more comfortable making sure it is included in writing to make sure that when we are putting together minutes, etc., to make sure that we are quoting you warmly and accurately. Feel free to avail yourself of that. If you would like to email any comments, please do. And if you would like to use that then to kind of provide a summary during the meeting, also acceptable. So opening the floor for resident comments.
Now, can I raise my hand?
Yeah, go for it, Marty.
Okay. I want to thank you for the two documents that were in the packet and for the time to actually read them. The one is on the voter verification process, and the other is the instructions that go into the packet, which is key piece of information for the community. I do have some comments about the voter roll procedures document, which I think would make more sense if we did them when you get to that part of the agenda rather than up front, rather than skipping back and forth. So I wanted to ask you, George, if we could allow me to talk about that when we get to what's number 5 on the agenda, the voter roll verification document. Can we do that?
No, we're just going to do resident comments during the comment period. So if you have comments you'd like to share, please go ahead and I'll make sure that we get those captured.
Okay, well, a couple things. Let me go back to the minutes first. The Ways and Means Committee of the Maryland House of Delegates, it's WAYS, not Ways as in Ways 10 pounds. Minor thing there. On the voter roll procedures, I have a couple of general points to make and maybe come back with more specifics at the end of the meeting. There is a general requirement, recommendation for writing regs that says that you should be specific and avoid passive voice. For example, if it says that the voter roll must be prepared and submitted to the vendor in April, generally one would want to say who is going to do that. And this is sort of a generic comment about the document, which I think on the whole, Allison, you did a really good job on. It's got a lot of content. It's much clearer than it was in its previous incarnation. But it really does need to, I think, have somebody go through it about dealing with the passive voice and saying who will do things, because generally it's the committee that would do it. Sometimes it's the committee in coordination with the village manager. But anyway, there is a passive voice thing that is just too vague in places. It makes me a little uncomfortable. The other thing that I noticed was that it doesn't say like who people should give stuff to. Like it says that residents who want to be added to the voter roll have to provide documentation that meets the committee's criteria, driver's license, whatever. But it doesn't say who the residents have to give the documentation to. And they could certainly give it to Michael in the village office, but the requirement in the ordinance, as I understand it, is that it's the committee that has to make the decision. So, Michael, you could collect, documentation from 10 or 20 new residents, maybe a kid who just turned 18. You might have the information they submit to the office, but that has to go to the committee that actually decides to admit that person onto the voter roll. So again, it's a clarification issue about who people are supposed to give things to and who is supposed to provide. The other general issue I had here is that everything that goes between the committee or the committee and the manager to the vendor, from the vendor, has to be in writing. And there are a couple places in the document where it says that the committee or the village manager will communicate with the election vendor. And that, again, I think is not clear enough to really meet the standards for regulatory writing. It needs to, Allison, I know you do regulatory writing all the time. So this is something I'm sure that's very much right up your lane. But that that's an issue. So communication has to be in writing and it should say so. Let's see what else. Ballot curing. George, it's a question, entirely different subject here, but what is the result of your conversations so far with Ron about how VMA can cure ballots in this election? I mean, do you have an answer to that yet?
Nothing final. We're still in ongoing conversation.
Okay. And I think the last of my sort of preliminary questions, there may be more at the end, is when will the voter roll be publicly available and which version will be publicly available? As a candidate, for example, a couple years back, I pulled a copy of the voter roll, which turned out to be very helpful. Is that the voter roll that you send to the vendor the first week of April, presumably has already been sent, right? Yes, no?
No,
Has not been sent yet, okay. Is that voter roll that you send to the vendor going to be available for the public?
so across the board, the voter roll is a public document. It is
Correct,
always
yeah.
available.
My question is which version?
Whatever the most recent version when a request is made.
Okay, good. Thank you. That clarifies that. All right, I'm going to shut up and let other people talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Larry?
Yeah, I want to thank Allison and the rest of you for preparing the packet. I think Marty's points are really valid. One thing I'm kind of curious about, in addition, is when somebody is trying to put themselves on the voter roll, is there any procedure to confirm to them that they have been placed on the voter roll?
Formal procedure, not to my knowledge.
Well, it wouldn't take much more than an email response, but the point being, it would be kind of one of the biggest problems many people feel with the village is that you make communication to the village and it goes into a black hole and nothing comes back. It might be nice to know that somebody says you've been added to the voter roll, and that's what I'm suggesting.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Larry. Any other resident comments? Okay, seeing none. We will move to the next item on the agenda, approval of minutes. Allison, thank you for circulating our minutes from our last meeting. I'm taking tonight's ones, Allison, Ben, so I'll keep them covered on that front, but do we have a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Motion passes. Minutes are introduced. Okay. Okay. Fourth on the agenda, we have vendor coordination and scheduling update. So this was something we put on the calendar where Michael, we wanted to give you a chance to provide an update on current status of the coordination with our vendor, who I believe we now can formally say is Electech, right?
Correct. Thank you. Yes, the contract has been signed and everything's ready to go there with the election service provider Electech yet again this year. So we're happy to have them back. And they are already working. So we have included in the packet today, we've included the sample ballots. So I mean, not the sample ballots, the sample envelopes, excuse me. The sample ballots got removed from the ballot today because we had a couple edits already and we didn't want to put something out there that wasn't ready yet. Those two edits we found were it copied last year's language saying vote for no more than 3. There's only 2 council seats open this year, so we changed that to for no more than 2. And also it included the words incumbent next to the incumbents that are running. So we had them remove that as a standard practice in previous years. And actually today they were able to provide the updated ballot. So I could actually show you all that right now if you are interested.
Yeah.
Can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so there's the sample ballot. And it has sample across it. And this is also the one that they are planning to send as soon as I tell them to a test ballot to the election committee and then one additional one to me as well. And these are randomized. So these is the order of the candidates for the first one, but there's also the other order. And we have all three possible versions there. So that is the ballot. I will provide this to the committee so that you all can do an official review of it and make sure you have it in your files as well as mine. But that's what it'll look like. And as soon as I give them the approval to go ahead with these, they'll go ahead and send the test. The other piece is they are waiting for I know we're working on it today, and is the instructions that go in the packet as well. So the plan is for the test, unless we can get something to them tonight, is to send a test with just a blank page saying this is where the instructions will go, because we don't have it yet. They're also ready to go to print. So the printing all the envelopes, printing the actual ballots once we approve them. We'll need to approve them, and we also need to tell them how many. They always print some extras because there's replacement ballots potentially, and also, just if anything comes up. But that would be, so we will need a count for them on how many we're expecting, which will come out of once we have a draft voter roll that you all have put together and finalized, for them, then we'll have a count at least on how many they should print. So the sooner we can do that, the sooner they can get started. And then the last piece for scheduling from their perspective is when would they mail the actual ballots with the packets and everything to every single address on the voter roll. That is supposed to happen after the candidate forum. So I know we still need to schedule that. So we're kind of in a holding pattern until we get a couple of these things in order. I think that's it for vendor coordination and scheduling. They have been really great. I can't reiterate that enough. They're very responsive, and I'm on the phone with Nikki at Electech every day. So it's been going well.
Michael, is there a cost difference at all of last year we had what, like 620 something, right?
626, even though the final report from last year's committee said 627. That was the lines on the spreadsheet, which included the header line, I assume. So
yeah. But so is there a difference if we say, okay, we want 640 printed now, and then we wind up 2 weeks from now, whatever, we get some rainstorm, people lose some, and we have to print an extra 15 then, versus if we just say, hey, give us 655 in the initial print, is that the same cost?
From us, what we're paying is set. That's in the contract, and we have that already set. I think they prefer to print some extras ahead of time. That way, less coordination and less potential for errors. Going to print, a different printer or something.
Got it.
So yeah, that's what they've done for us in prior years as well. Yep.
Yeah, I'm trying to think from the last few years, and I'll double check the records, but I think usually we wind up having to remail maybe like 15 tops. I think that's been my experience the last couple of years, and I'll double check back at to make sure that's right. But I think it's been kind of tops has been about 15 new ballots to be mailed. And I think last year was higher because we did have people who came down to the table and requested and said, because we did make that available where you can come down and say, hey, I don't have mine, come down, fill out the form. And at the end of the day, I think we had like 3 or 4 names that people requested them at the table that day. Because I think it was just a reminder that I think they had thrown theirs out in the mail or something. So. Yeah. Allison, Ben, any questions?
Nothing for me.
Ben, anything from you?
Nothing for me.
Cool. Okay, thank you, Michael.
No problem.
Voter roll process and next steps. Allison, thanks for sending the process doc around. I know, yeah, we've taken a look at it. I know we're going to continue to, make some refinements on it, especially on the language that hasn't triggered yet, because of it's all stuff on, late changes and challenges to the role during the election period. So thank you for sharing that. Michael, I'm going to put you on the spot again. Do you want to provide an update on kind of where we're at with the initial execution side
For the voter
for
roll.
the voter roll?
Yeah, I have a draft voter roll, and what I've done is I've taken last year's list, the final voter list, and compared it to the county's list. That was my first step. The county has about 800 people listed in the village, but a bunch of them are inactive, and their list is honestly, there's people that are dead on their list. So not a great vote of confidence for the county's voter roll, but I'm still going street by street and comparing every single voter roll, and I'm basically just putting them together in the same spreadsheet, removing the duplicates, and then any one that's only shows up on one of the lists, I'm highlighting so that I can provide it to you all with every single person that is a possible voter in the village, and they're highlighted if they only showed up on one of the lists. I've also received a list from a street captain that was very helpful, and I've verified every single one of those people that they had on their list with the 2 lists that I already had. I've also collected, since I started in November, I've collected every change that has happened in the village that I'm aware of. That includes anyone that turned 18, anyone that has moved in or out of the village, and marked that accordingly. I'm also on the spreadsheet, I'm putting in a comment section, so you all can go through and see what I did, or if I had a question about somebody, or if I know someone's birth year, and I can say, I highlight that and call attention to that. I'm almost ready. There's also other lists. I pulled all the changes in our directory. That's our constant contact email list. So all the changes which have happened over the last year, and I actually went over the last 2 years just to see if last year you might have missed somebody. So I'm pulling in all those different lists that we have, and anything I'm aware of. We did put a call out to send us any changes that people are aware of, so people can definitely reach out to me anytime. I don't agree with the comment that some people feel like it's a black box, and I take personal offense to that. I have less than 20 emails in my email box, and I'm very organized and respond to everything. So everyone that's emailed me will get a response, and I'll make sure everyone's on the voter roll that I'm possibly aware of. And then you will all have an opportunity to go through it as well before, mine's just a draft. It goes to you all. You are the ones that finalize the list. So that's where we're at. I'm going street by street now, because that's a little bit easier to break it down that way for me, and comparing all the lists. So I've gone through about half the streets. And once I'm done with that process, I will go ahead and send it over to the committee for you all to have your review.
Excellent. Yes, thank you so much, Michael. Yeah, I know you and I have been in contact as you've been kind of pulling on that throughout this process, and I'm very appreciative of all the work you've done. I've also seen, because you are CCing the committee box and responding on things, so I've seen you being responsive. We've already had some inquiries from people, making sure that they're on the roll. You're responding to those quickly and efficiently, and I am very appreciative as a committee member, and I have no doubt that the residents who have emailed in are also very appreciative on that front. I think in my mind, for the committee, I think our next steps are, when Michael finishes pulling together that draft, I'll send it out to the committee members. We'll all take a chance to go through it. We'll follow up with kind of any specific adjudications, or if there's any other next steps that we want to collectively run it through. And then our next step on it is, it's not finalizing the voter roll because the voter roll is not finalized until late May, but it's the initial agreement of we are sending a current draft to Electech so they can begin printing the stuff. So I know we have to collectively kind of make the agreement that this is as of, I think last year what we wound up having to do is we wound up, it gets marked in the copy, and there's a committee process for going through and just saying this, yes, we are all in agreement, this is the version being sent to the vendor on date X. Because the form that Ron helped us draft last year, that's like kind of the final locked one, that will happen election day, I believe. And so I know that's the next step. And as Michael mentioned, we put out the first call, but I think in all of our Friday roundups, I'm also going to say, I think we'll probably include in the election stuff, we'll just include the note for everybody to keep that call going of move-ins in your house. If you have neighbors, encourage them to, if they have any questions, to follow up. And yeah, just keep communicating with people to let them know. And then the last one that I think I wanted to flag for Michael that we found in the last few years is when the ballots get mailed out, we get the notification, we send out kind of the message to people of, hey, ballots are being mailed out on this date. If you don't have one in the next 3 or 4 days, call the office, because it's either it's a mailing problem and we'll get it corrected, or you might not be on the voter roll and we'll get that corrected as well. So that's another one I just wanted to flag, is whenever they go out, we prepare for. We have not had in the past that actually come up, but we at least like to prepare for the idea that some of that stuff's going to come over. So Allison, Ben, any other thoughts, next steps we want to go through?
No, I just, first of all, thank you, Michael, because I know you're doing a lot of work, and I know that you responded to me when I asked for a change on the voter roll within minutes, seems like. So thank you. I'm happy to take Marty's comments under advisement and take another draft at adding some more specifics in there and pass it back to you.
Okay, thank you. And
I have no comments.
okay, cool. I think, yeah, Michael,
How about this? How about I get you all the draft voter roll? I know we're already running behind as far as getting that to the vendor. So how about I get it to you by the end of the week? That'll give me tomorrow and Friday to finalize my draft version, and then I'll have highlighted all the ones that I think are suspect, or it's a kid that's older than 30 years old, so whether they still live at home or not is kind of a question mark. There's a lot of those types of situations that I'll highlight for you all, but let me commit right now to getting to you all on Friday.
Okay, that sounds good. And we'll we'll take the review through, and hopefully we'll be able to get it turned around, get at least that initial draft turned around fairly quickly. And the good news is it's also, even when it goes over, it's not, there is still plenty of time to address and mitigate any issues, gaps. We can both mail out new ones, and if it is later in the process and it's like, yeah, that person does not live there anymore, we can cancel their control numbers and get it voided. So we can definitely take care of that from there.
Right.
So.
And I would rather have more people on the list than less people. So I'm putting everyone on there, and then if you all know something that I don't about someone's not here anymore, then we can remove them, no problem.
Yeah, I think those are good next steps. And I do also, Michael hit on this, but I would also like to foot stomp this, a huge thank you to the street captain who sent over some pretty detailed notes to the committee box on all of the updates on their street. That was fantastic and very helpful. So thank you to our street captains. Anything else on voter roll? Okay. Moving on, ballot instructions and ballot package discussion. So as Michael mentioned, we've got the updated ballots. I know they weren't attached to the package for tonight, but I can attest they are, as Michael showed, they're very, very similar to last year. It is some pretty minimal updates. So I think those are, those will be able to, everyone will be able to take a look. I think we should all take another review, try and get those cleared by the end of the week. The other part of the ballot packet, so the envelopes, we've all had a chance to review, and then the last one is the ballot instructions. So I want to start with the ballot instructions. The thing attached in the meeting packet was me taking last year's instructions and just doing a Control F on 22 and 2022 and changing it to 2023. I think there's probably one or two other things in there that we want to just make sure we're catching, cleaning up, etc. But other than that, I don't think the instructions, at least for me, please tell me if I'm wrong on this, Alice and Ben, I don't think they need to change much. It's pretty self-explanatory about filling it out. We've got the big bold text reminding people to fill out the affidavit. So hopefully we don't go into a ballot curing situation, making that big obvious one for people. I like having that in there. Do you guys spot anything else in there that we want to tag or flag?
No, I thought the bold and the underlining was in the right places. Envelope instructions clear. Very good.
Ben, anything?
I have nothing.
Okay. I did flag there's one thing on there that I had asked Michael about earlier this week because it talked about the control numbers on envelopes and things like that. Last year, we did have a question come in from a resident relating to QR codes on the ballot, which was a result of the printer that Electech was using. That's how they converted some of the tracking numbers into QR codes. So Michael is following up with Electech because, frankly, I think the QR codes work. If that speeds up and makes their process faster, more accurate, totally on board. But I do want to, before we finalize the language, I want to be clear for people if they should be looking for a number or a QR code for that control stuff. And then the other one is just because we did get a question from a resident last year about what are each of these QR codes. I want to have that in our pocket so we've got a quick, easy answer and say that is a mailing QR code. That is a whatever code that is put on by the Postal Service, et cetera, et cetera. So Michael and I had talked earlier this week, and he's going to follow up with Electech on that. But I think there was one thing that I had highlighted yellow in there that was about the ballot control numbers, and just make sure if it's going to be a QR code, the instructions say, it's the code. So that way nobody's looking for a number that isn't there. Other than that, does anybody have anything you've spotted on the instructions, the envelopes, or initial look at any of the ballots?
I do not.
Yep. I think all three of our candidates on here. So having seen the packets, and I'm sure we will circulate the things, asking the candidates, please double check, make sure we spelled your names correctly. Don't want to send anything out that doesn't have your names in it. I think it's all right, but for the candidates, if all of you guys get the chance, just take a look, make sure that there's no typos or anything when we're putting that stuff on there. I would appreciate that.
George, is there an opportunity for me to post that either as an attachment to the minutes or maybe just post it on the election webpage, the sample ballots? That way people do have a chance to view them. I feel bad because we weren't able to get it included in this packet, but
yeah, I think if we can do it as like some kind of an addendum, or if we, frankly, I'd say if we can do an updated version of the meeting packet, just mark it at the top and say this is updated as of post meeting in order to include the ballot things, then I think that's good. But
okay.
So I will take one last review on the instructions and circulate those around so that way we can get those updated and approved. But other than that, I guess assuming or post those updates and post the review. Let's at least start with, we can do the ballot envelopes. I move that we are approving the ballot envelope drafts as they are currently constructed.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. And we will, I also say, I don't think it necessarily needs to be a motion, but yeah, we'll go through the ballots and the ballot instructions and get those approved, but I don't anticipate any other changes other than just, yeah, the instructions, I think it's just getting the dates lined up. Okay. Anything else on the ballot package?
no.
Okay. Next up is candidate forum scheduling. We've got some initial dates that we flagged. Allison, Ben, I think I've got the stuff from Eric, but did you guys respond to my email? I apologize. I started a new job last week, so my email box got a little crazy. Did you guys send back your dates that you are available?
I did.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm coming off of vacation. I must have missed that email. I'll find it and respond.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think, yeah, Ben, if you get that through, then we'll I think we've got the email drafted and ready to go to the candidates and we'll offer them dates the back half. I think it's probably going to be the third week, I think, of the third week of April, but we'll get that so we can get that scheduled and we can get the request out to everybody who wants to send in questions, because I think that's get it scheduled, and then we want to get it publicized so people can attend, people can send in questions as they need.
Oh, George, the
Yeah, Katie,
council meeting's on the 20th of
Yep.
Thursday, so that would be the third week, but so yeah, I was wondering if it was that week or the following week, but
We're taking a look, but yeah, Michael sent me the upcoming calendar for the council meeting, and I think there's one or two committee meetings back half of the month as well. And so obviously we're not going to overlap with any of those. So yeah, we will get that scheduling email sent around the next day or so. So hopefully we can get it publicized by Friday once we've picked a date and let people know that they can start sending in questions and let everybody get prepped for it.
okay, great.
The other part of candidate forum I think we need to do is talking through logistics. So figuring out moderator schedule, figuring out some of the like kind of question asking logistics. I know kind of discussion on how we're like kind of live questions, all kind of pre-sent in questions. Do we all actually want to be in the office for doing this? I think that's going to be something we send to the candidates and try and figure out if it's one where we're in order to schedule this, we need to do it over Zoom, or if there's kind of a general consensus towards doing this in the office, which I think will impact it a little bit. So first up, moderating. Do we want to, last year we did it as kind of a committee joint moderating it with, I think it was 3 of us moderating and just kind of helping rotate the questions. We've done single moderators in the past. Does anyone have a preference one way or the other?
I like the rotating moderators. As a candidate, unsuccessful candidate last year, it was nice. It kept you on your toes,
Yeah.
and added some levity, as one of the moderators couldn't figure out how to unmute. Kind of lightened up the mood. So
Yeah. Allison, what are your thoughts?
Well, having not been a candidate and not been a committee member, I don't feel that qualified to speak on this. I will say that as somebody who does interviews people a lot, I do think it's harder when you rotate. I think you sort of lose a connection, but I can go either way. I have no strong opinion.
I lean towards having done both solo moderating and group moderating. Group moderating was definitely a little bit easier. Among other things, it made it a little bit easier for just, yeah, not having to be the only voice asking some of the questions. I think that just made it a little bit easier to rotate. I think the one where we'll want to be careful is I like the idea of kind of group moderating, but I think we need to lock in kind of one person to do timekeeping, just so that way I think it's easier for the candidates. So that way, if it is Zoom or if it's in person, they know the one eye line that they are going for to make sure they're seeing the signs for 15 seconds, you're out of time, etc. I think that single timekeeper, but I like the idea of rotating the questions, especially if it's one where we're using a lot of the submitted questions. I think it's one where it's a little bit easier because last year was pretty easy where we had the list in advance. We could go through and say, okay, Eric's question, Paul's question, George's question, et cetera. And so you're able to kind of plan it out a little bit better.
And also not to blaspheme those who aren't with us, but I'm hoping Michael is more on a Zoom game than Niles was. We can actually have that clock up there that Niles failed to do. Mike, I mean, Michael, it's up to you. We're all eyes are on you.
Look, I think the pressure's on the timekeeper. I do not want that job.
Eric's not here. We'll make him do it.
May I add something? And then also, can you have multiple recording devices, please?
Yeah, that's a one we'll cover with Michael, but yeah, it'll be recorded across the board on a couple of approaches to make sure we avoid any technical issues like we had. So yes, it'll be recorded on multiple things. I think I'm in favor. It might also be one where we see how many questions are coming in, because if it's something where we're incorporating a lot more live questions, I think that goes a lot more towards kind of solo moderating, because you want a little bit more of that person to kind of control that ebb and flow. I can say that, I mean, the last couple of years we had so many submitted questions that there wasn't really a strong or in order to get to all of those questions, that didn't leave a lot of time for asking live questions. I also think there's some challenges around live questions with ensuring they're in compliance with some of the rules. And Ben, I saw you sent around the forum things that include some of those expectations on questions. And there's some stuff in the election plan this year that also clarifies that. So I think if we're doing anything live, I think we want to be careful to reiterate that and have the moderator be kind of on top of it, empowered to step in if anything is running afoul of those rules. Allison, Ben, do you guys have any thoughts between trying to do it in person or doing it all over Zoom?
So the only objection I really have is I think that a hybrid thing would be a disaster. I mean, I attended the last council meeting and it really didn't go very well because the mics and people online. And I also think it puts whoever, if there is a candidate who is not live and everybody else is, I mean, there's disadvantage. I think somebody's disadvantaged whichever way. So other than that, I think it could be live or it could be on Zoom.
Yeah. And if it is something where we're live, I think it's still definitely something that turns into like the council meetings where it is technically streamed. But I'm with you in terms of, I think it's either all the candidates there or none of them there, because I think trying to balance between people in the room and somebody's on the computer turns into a little bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, I would agree that if all the candidates are up for doing it live, I would do it live. But if candidates, one candidate cannot, then we do it completely by Zoom. I think there's some advantages to live. It's easier to record in that aspect, which will help if Michael turns out to be another Niles.
Okay. Okay. I think that's included in the scheduling email. So hopefully we'll get some feedback from the candidates, and we'll be able to figure out the tech details on that. I do know it's also included in there. It's kind of the language of if any of the candidates need assistance with participating, if it is via Zoom. That is definitely something where the committee will work with them to get them either the equipment or the availability or access to, for example, the office if it's all being done via Zoom, but they don't have equipment or space or something where they can participate from wherever they are. So we will make that available. The other one relating to the questions being asked is a submission of anonymous questions. That's a new thing in the election plan this year. We have done in the past, what we've done is when people email questions to the box, they can request and say, please don't use my name. That doesn't actually meet the criteria for anonymous because technically everything that comes into the box is a public record, and someone can submit a public records request and say, I want to see all of the questions that were submitted to the committee. So we need a system by which people can submit anonymous questions. One thing I would say as a possibility is we do have the old vote box. Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, it's still somewhere in the office that we use for the holiday fund and vote counting stuff. And it is a locked wooden box that we have in the office.
Yes, I have my own padlock on it right now.
Okay. I think we can include that in the question submission stuff. Is technically the plan says they can send it by any means necessary. I'm fully in favor of encouraging people to send it to the committee inbox because it provides a central location and it provides traceability. But if people want to call me and leave me voicemails, if they want to text me, but I think the anonymous one I would propose is we'll put the box out and people can drop written cards off in the vote box, and we will check it at some point prior to the forum to pull all of those questions and make sure they're incorporated into our question list.
Do we allow people to just mail? I mean, they could just mail it to the village office too, right?
Yes. Yes, they can mail. So I think, like I said, I think this year the election plan reads that the villagers can submit it through any means they find convenient. So I think we're gonna, like I said, I'm personally in favor of encouraging people to send it to the committee box. But I think we are just gonna have to be flexible and adapt as people send us questions. And I can say if people call me or text me, I will pretty immediately try and get those transcribed and emailed from me to the box. So that way we've got everything in one location as quickly as possible. But I think we're just gonna have to be flexible. But for anonymous ones, what do you guys think about just, designating that the vote box and asking Michael to get that placed out so that people can submit written questions into the wooden box?
I like that. I wonder if we should put a deadline on it though, because we don't want somebody dropping off. I mean, we need some time to read the question and incorporate, right? So once we know when our forum is.
Yeah. Well, I think we do a deadline anyway, right? Like I think.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, like if the forum's the 22nd, I think we'll probably say, questions have to be in by the 19th or the 20th. Having done it the last 2 years, it doesn't take that long to pull together the question list. I think we can kind of close it about maybe 48 hours before the forum, and it's not that hard to go through and deconflict is the wrong word, but smooth out, hey, there's 6 questions that are basically asking the same thing. Let's consolidate down into one and make sure that the questions cover, a broad range of topics. Ben, what do you think about using the box for anonymous one?
Oh, I concur. That's
Okay.
what I do.
Yep. I also think that'll work because then we can just I'll wind up volunteering for this. I think what we'll probably wind up doing is, then whenever the deadline is closed, have 2 of us go down there, unlock the box, take it out, count, see how many were in there, make sure we're documenting all of the ones that were submitted via the box. So, okay. Does anybody want to take first cut at the email we will send out to the village announcing the forum and asking for submission of questions. We will obviously have to put placeholders in for the date of the forum and date of deadline for questions to be submitted, but does anybody want to take first cut at that?
I'll go ahead and do that. I can probably
Okay,
do that
thanks, Ben.
tomorrow.
And Ben, I saw you sent the forum procedures. I haven't had a chance to go through it yet, but I think we'll take a look and we'll take a
Yeah.
look and send around some edits and get all that squared away.
I apologize. I thought I sent it out before I left on vacation. I realized it was just sitting on my computer.
Yeah, no worries. It's not, I can't imagine it's gonna wind up being a huge change from previous years, and it's having moderated the last couple of years, it's pretty straightforward in terms of the questions and the time. The big one is just, making sure we've got clear guidance on the time that we can communicate to the candidates as early as possible so they know when they're prepping, they have to get used to speaking for 90 seconds or 70 seconds or whatever thing we put in. Okay. Anything else on the candidate forum?
No.
Michael, anything on the village side that we need to consider incorporate? I know we need to get the date of the forum to the vendor so they can figure out when they're doing the mailing.
Yeah, because the form needs to happen before people receive their ballots, so they can mail it the same day, I guess, but not before that.
I think it has to get mailed I think it has to get mailed after the forum. So I think
Okay, so the next day, yeah, then actually, I kind of think recording on via Zoom is easier than recording in the room, just from the council meetings. And I'm going to speak to the council about their behavior in the room, because people are talking over each other and the windows are open and it's causing problems. But I'm working on it and trying to make it better. But running a hybrid event is rough. So that's my only comment there.
Yep, I think that makes sense. Okay. So nothing else on the forum? We're good. Okay. Before I move to resident comment, it's just one other thing I wanted to touch on that I think as a committee we are going to need to figure out, that this is an add to the agenda. I apologize. This was something that came up very late today. I think we as a committee just need to figure out kind of our process for as we get into the election period. We're going to start seeing candidate materials, et cetera. If any of those materials go out that have anything that runs afoul or gets into questionable area related to the election plan, I think we need to figure out kind of what our process is going to look like for addressing that. I think generally, especially with this stuff, we've had it happen a couple of times over the last few years where it's little inadvertent stuff. I think it's just one where we kind of talk collectively as a committee and send an email to the candidate and ask them to mitigate any issues kind of stuff, and we'll get it squared away. If it gets bigger than that, then I think it's something where we then have to get into basically having to have a public meeting to talk through, because anything bigger than that starts getting into, I think, policy making and decision stuff. But I think on little admin stuff that are kind of small technical ones, I think it's one we can probably handle pretty well just by coordinating amongst each other and providing kind of notification and updates on the rules, and see and kind of go from there in terms of what the candidate self-mitigation looks like versus if it's something where we actually have to step in and start talking about kind of remedial action. Allison, Ben, any questions, thoughts, anything you want to weigh in on that?
I'm good.
I don't think so, unless you think we have to actually articulate a process right now, or you're just suggesting that the process is, if it's small, we talk amongst ourselves by email or whatever, candidate mitigation. If it's large, then we have to call a meeting.
So I think it's one where if it is something where I would say, and this is me kind of working off the top of my head, I think it's one where if it is something where I'd say the first step is if either we spot something or someone raises something to us about an issue, I think our first step is we look at it and I think we can administratively decide whether or not it's something where we want to notify the candidate that there is a question, an issue either has been noticed by us or has been raised, and it's just a notification, and basically kind of leave it to the candidate to self-mitigate. And if there is not a mitigation at that point, then I think it's one where I think the process I would say is at that point we wind up having to do something in a it's not a public meeting on the issue, but we have to have a public meeting because then at that point we are starting to talk substantive issues and we need to do that in an open manner in order to comply with the act. So I think if it's just one where it's just providing kind of a notification to the candidate, then I think that's something we can handle administratively by email of just, hey, this has been raised. And if they are kind of on top of the ball and address it. Like that's, I know that's what's happened a couple of times the last few years where there's been little things and the candidates apologized and took the steps to correct the issue.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for the clarification.
So I guess I will motion and say that I propose that is the process that we will follow in terms of first step notification. And then if it needs to be elevated, we'll have to schedule a public session after that.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Allison, I didn't hear, are you aye or nay?
sorry, I
All
eyed.
opposed? Okay, thanks. Got it. Thank you. Okay. That was it for things I had. Allison, Penn, anything you guys wanted to cover?
I think you hit all the topics.
I concur. Thank you for a very
Yep.
thorough meeting.
Okay, 8:36, I will open the floor for resident comments. Once again, reminding people, if you would like, you can send us an email with additional comments, but or if you would like to make comments now, either Zoom raise your hand or just come on camera and kind of wave your hand at us and we will get you added. So first up, I see Arthur Alexander.
Yeah, one quick question that came up when I was reading the draft instructions and you say fill in the affidavit. It's not really clear what an affidavit is. You might want to clarify that and say that the signature on the envelope.
Okay,
You may have people running off to find a notary and something like that to see what an affidavit means, or a judge or something of that sort.
okay, that's a good note. Thanks, Arthur.
But that's it.
All right, thank you, Arthur. Marty?
Thanks again for a well-organized meeting. I want to piggyback on Arthur's question about the instructions say that people have to sign it, but the actual affidavit affirmation forms on the envelopes the last few years have asked people to fill in their addresses as well. So my question to you is, what will the committee do if somebody signs, Joe Smith, but doesn't fill in their address? That's a valid envelope. It had a signature and that follows the instructions. The instructions don't say you have to fill out the whole form. It says you have to sign it. I personally think signing it is all you need to do. I'm not advocating that people have to fill out all the rest of the form. I'm wondering if number one, the committee might want to tell the vendor to just put the signature line on. I mean, the address is unnecessary in my view. And number two, if it has the regular form we've used in the last 2 years, if people just sign their names without filling out the address, is that a valid?
Marty, I can say that's something we get legal guidance on, and I'm sure we will be getting additional legal guidance on that this year as to whether or not that is something that is accepted or if it needs to drop into the curing process. But I have no doubt that's something that is part of our ongoing conversation with Ron.
Okay, thank you. And whatever Ron tells you, please be very, very clear in the instructions you know, that a signature is enough or a signature is not enough, either way. And I agree that it really needs to be highlighted perhaps even more, because like you, I hope we don't need to go through a curing process, since that's still sort of up in the air, waiting with Ron to get back to you guys. If we don't have any envelopes that need to be cured, that makes life easier for everybody. But that is really on the committee, I think, to make it just crystal clear what people need to do with that envelope. And so thank you for following up on that. A couple other notes. Live questions. I just wanted to mention that what we had done historically under Frank Carell and me as well was alternate a question from the list and then a live question. And we did in fact have some guidelines about civility, you know, not targeting people by name and things like that. People didn't always comply, but that's sort of the breaks of the game. I think Arthur Alexander is the one who said that's part of what makes being a candidate interesting, is you get all kinds of questions from the voters. And again, that's up to the moderator to gavel somebody, you know, if they're really out of line. But I would encourage the committee to be open to people asking their own questions, and if possible, to do what we did historically, which is alternate. One live, one from the list, one live, one from the list. Let me see my other notes here. There will be post office tracking on both the incoming and return envelopes. Yes, no, maybe?
Yes,
Yes, both ways.
yes.
That's really important. And thank you for rotating the names on the ballot. That helps for that positional bias. And let me see what else. I think that was it for now. The forum, obviously, it's nice. I mean, it's fun. I run forums with, you know, everybody there in the office. I run forums by Zoom, but the residents need to come in by Zoom. I mean, that is, everybody agrees that the residents can come in by Zoom, because it absolutely quadruples, quintuples, sextuples the number of people who can attend. So the residents are coming in by Zoom? Yes? Correct?
Even if it's being done live, there's always the opportunity to watch via streaming stuff. I think that's something I don't know if we're required to do it, but I think I remember something like that. But yeah, even if it's all being done in person, there's an opportunity for people to observe via Zoom.
That's a good answer. My question is, can people, you know, voters who are on Zoom ask live questions?
That's going to be up to the moderator, and we're going to have to figure that one out.
Yeah, that's a technical thing that the people ought to be able to ask live questions, because you have 80 people on the line on Zoom. You don't want to silence all those voters. You want to give them a chance to ask questions, I think. So I hope you will do that. And that's it on my notes for the moment. Thank you very much. I think this has been a very helpful meeting.
Thanks, Marty. Andrew?
Yeah, just real quickly. Well, first of all, thank you for all your hard work to the committee and Michael. I know how much effort goes into this. So very much appreciated. My only question was, did you say for the forum, it would be the third week of April? Because that's next week. Or is it the last week of April, the week to the 24th?
We're going to send some dates around.
Okay. And how many options do we have? Like, you're going to send 2 options, 3 options? Is that been cleared already, or have you not figured that out yet?
We're figuring that out for making sure we've got enough committee members, but I imagine it's going to be probably 4 or 5.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Joel?
Hey, echoing Andrew, thank you for all the great work. It's really amazing to see how robust the plan is and how much thought has been put into it. Some quick questions, and Katie and Andrew may already know the answers to these since they've done this one before. So, you know, I was interested, George, in the section that you highlighted on printed materials. All I saw with regards to policies on printed materials was in the electioneering section in the election rules and procedures. Is there more that I should be looking at? Is there any more detail somewhere that I should be abiding by, or?
The electioneering section covers it. And there's also, I think there's the electioneering section references something, or at least 1 or 2 other sections in the code. And then the last one to be cognizant of is basically postal regulations that have to do with you can't put unstamped things in people's mailboxes.
Okay, great.
Um,
That seems pretty clear. Thank you. Can I follow up with some more questions?
Yeah.
So the rule on $1 fair market value, I'm just trying to understand what that means exactly. Are we saying that it's $1 per item or it's $1 total in aggregate? Like if you print 2 flyers, does that exceed $1? Is that within $1? What's the rule around this?
My understanding is it's $1 per item.
Okay, got it. Okay, so we're just trying to limit, I understand the spirit of the rule, I
Yeah.
think. And then on the question of whether to do it live or not, you know, just stating a preference, I think, you know, I'm sure you all will make a very prudent decision. There's something exciting and interesting about the live in-person format. I think just the preference would be that we're not tiny dots on a screen with rough audio for everybody who's on Zoom. If we find that the technical limitations are too strong, that I would just prefer to be at home, you know, in my big box with the clear audio. So defer to you all, just stating a light preference there. And thanks again for all your work.
Thank you. Marty, is your hand up new or is that leftover?
It's a new hand. I just want to go to Joe. The only glitch we ever had on candidate materials that was with any, you know, material consequence was there was one year when a couple of the candidates forgot to put at the bottom of their flyers that they were walking around the neighborhood that it was paid for by them or on their behalf. And there was a little kerfuffle that somebody thought that 2 incumbent candidates had used village funds to print their flyers, which was not true. They had not. They paid for it personally. But I did have a situation where I had to go to 2 candidates as the committee chair that, you know, after the committee discussed it, you know, by email and designated me to tell the candidates that they should please write by hand on their flyers, you know, paid for by Joe Smith. And they did. They complied. So just a reminder. And we also had a couple complaints in prior years about people putting candidate flyers in mailboxes. And as I think George said, that is not forbidden by the village, it's forbidden by the US Postal Service. So thank you for being careful on both those points to all the candidates, and I look forward to reading your flyers.
Thank you, Marty. Any other resident comments? Okay. Seeing none. Do I have a motion from Allison or Ben?
Motion to adjourn.
Do
Second.
I have a second? All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, it is 8:46. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, so much.